Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake, and I'm here with Winston C. and Kelsey McEwen. Welcome to Your Morning, the podcast.
We have an exciting and action-packed podcast for you this week. The Doctor is back for a second season. We'll share a conversation with Frasier's Kelsey Grammer, and legendary love story novelist Nicholas Sparks talks to us about the release of his 24th novel.
Also, let's shift to a very X-Files vibe. We're going to hear all about a new Discovery Channel show. This is following two UFO experts in the quest for truth. And then CTV science and tech expert Dan Riskin explains how a space rock, ready for this, is about to become Earth's temporary mini-moon.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget, you can always watch us live, CTV Your Morning, weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern and 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic on CTV CTV News Channel, and on your CTV News app.
We're kicking off the week with some tossed salad and scrambled eggs. The reboot of Frasier is back for its second season.
Dr. Frasier Crane has left Seattle, landed in Boston. Season 2 sees a whole new ensemble cast, including Grammer's daughter, Greer.
It was pretty cool to have him in studio. A big presence there. Anne-Marie, you had a chance to sit down with not this Kelsey, a different Kelsey. Here's that interview now.
You have this amazing new ensemble cast. Everybody loves Raymond's Patricia Heaton is there. Community's Yvette Nicole Brown, Amy Sedaris, who people will know from Strangers with Candy and from Elf, of course. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend's Rachel Bloom, and then your real-life daughter, Greer Grammer, is also there. Tell me about working with this new set of young comedians, what that brings.
It's fantastic, actually. What's fun is that people are attracted to the show in a way that they kind of weren't in the early days, because it's like an institution is returning to television, and nobody had a chance to play with it before now.
Interesting.
And so we just mentioned almost anybody, and they'll come. Patty Heaton and I have a long history of trying to work together. So
I love that you call her Patty. Tell me about this history.
We met on an elevator almost 30 years ago, and I thought, she's kind of a cute, charming little number there. She's all right. Let's do something together. And I think she had the same reaction with me. And so we did a show called Back to You together. Well, I hope so.
Okay.
Maybe not cute. Maybe not diminutive, certainly. But he was. We did Back to You together. And that didn't go so well because the writer's strike hit.
Right.
And so after 18 episodes, that was done. Then we tried a quick salvo into a little show she was doing about 2 years ago. That didn't go over. So I thought, you know what? Let's try it again. So she's on.
And what does somebody like Patricia Heaton, she's so incredibly funny. What kind of spice does she bring to that set?
She just, what she brings is professionalism, and she's got a good sense of humor, and she knows how to execute. A lot of people don't understand what it is to just sort of be able to hit the sweet spot all the time. That's what she does.
That's a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Tell me about working with, lightning struck twice for you. You've worked with amazing ensemble casts in your career. How do you generate that with this new generation of comedians on set?
Right. The new kids are all good kids.
What does that mean?
That's all I can really say. Well, they're very talented, and they have there's a kind of reverence they have for the fact that they're on the show. But I sort of diffuse that instantly, because it's just supposed to be fun and have a good time. Yeah. And I encourage them to do their best work, and I think they're actually doing it. I stood at the side of the stage several shows ago watching them take their bows, and I thought they've arrived. They're doing it. They're doing a great job, and they're marvelous people, marvelous young people, but they're good. They're just good.
It is smart, sophisticated, funny, which is so appreciated and I really love. But there's an entire new generation of fans who may not know the story behind tossed salad and scrambled eggs, and you singing that. Would you mind to share that really quickly?
I don't mind. Actually, it's tossed salads and scrambled eggs is based loosely upon the Joni Mitchell song. My analyst told me that I was right out of my head the way he described it. Be better off dead than alive. I didn't listen to his drive. Anyway, that was the original sort of, that was the target.
Yeah.
And Bruce Miller just came up with this song about tossed salads and scrambled eggs, which was loosely just based upon the fact that we just go through life trying things and we don't know what's going to happen at the end of it. And I went in and did a sort of a bluesy version. At first, I was trying to do sort of a more straight version, but I told the guys, I said, I want to sing a theme song for a television show.
Okay.
So I said, okay, in you go. And they had actually said we weren't going to have a theme song.
Well, that changed everything. And you can't say Frasier without people going, hey, baby, I hear the blues.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Kelsey Grammer, great to have you here in the
Thanks,
studio.
Great
to meet you. You can catch the second season of Frasier on Paramount+. Next up, he has 10 consecutive New York Times bestsellers, a slew of Hollywood adaptations, including The Notebook, and he's probably made you cry at least some point in your life.
Nicholas Sparks' bibliography includes The Notebook, A Walk to Remember, Dear John, and more than a dozen other romantic blockbusters.
I'm pretty sure I've seen every single one of those in theaters.
And cried?
Cried my eyes out. Anne-Marie, you had the chance to talk to Nicholas about his new book, Counting Miracles. This is a story about finding a home in unexpected places. Take a listen.
You mentioned that one of your family members is actually an inspiration for a character in the book, Tanner Hughes. Tell me about that connection.
Sure. Tanner Hughes is a former military. He's a veteran. He got out of the military, served in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and then went to work for USAID, which is the foreign countries and doing good things around the world. Anyway, I was inspired by my cousin Todd, who served in the military and then got out and chose to work with veterans. And like my cousin Todd, many of the people that Tanner once worked with in the military have sadly committed suicide. So he's kind of on this journey as the novel begins to visit the families of those that he's lost. After that, it's a typically Nicholas Sparks novel. You got to start somewhere in the book and move in a positive direction.
And you got to move into love if this is a Nicholas Sparks story. So tell me about the love that he finds in this book.
You know, he goes to Asheboro, North Carolina. His grandmother recently passed away. She gives him information about the father he'd never known. So he goes there, you know, hoping to find some information about his dad, you know, this person that he's never met. And, you know, gets into a small fender bender that crunches his new car. He's a little upset. And he eventually meets Caitlin, who's a physician in town, and she's a divorced mother raising a couple of children, and you know she's busy in her life. She likes her career. She's trying to be the best mom she can, but you know, as her daughter says, you know, Mom, you know, at least I haven't forgotten how to be happy. You know, and that's something that strikes Caitlin right between the eyes, so to speak. And of course, it's a love story, so we can predict a little bit about what happens from that point on. And of course, that's only part of the story.
Well, so Nicholas, can I ask you about your body of work overall in these stories? I think what catches people is the fact that these are scenarios that they've either encountered or they know people who have encountered, and then yet you bring these characters to life for them, and there's this love and this longing. And I'm wondering, do you walk through life and you see or you hear a story and you think, that's my next book? And then what do you do with that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, in a way, right? You know, certainly Caitlin was drawn from any number of women that I know in their 40s who are divorced, who are raising their kids and trying to do the best they can in life in both with their children and their career. And so I do try to create characters that do strike a universal chord, and that's something that just happens naturally in the course of my life. And so you want to do that neat blend between, hey, it can happen to anyone, but this is kind of an original story as well.
Oh, and we love them so much. Hey, I'm excited for everyone to get a chance to read Counting Miracles. Good to talk to you again, Nicholas.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much.
Next up, the Tragically Hip like you've never seen them before. After its debut at TIFF, the Tragically Hip No Dress Rehearsal is now available to stream.
Gord Downey's brother, Mike Downey, and longtime hip manager Jake Gold have produced a stunning new documentary featuring unseen footage and interviews of the band. It offers viewers a chance to know everything they've ever wanted to know about one of Canada's biggest and most loved bands.
Yeah, Lindsey had a chance to sit down with Mike and Jake, which was great because she's such a huge fan. It was a really fascinating and moving conversation. Here's that interview.
I have to ask you about the premiere at TIFF. That moment, we've seen the footage of all of the people gathering and singing. What was that like?
Tremendous,
Yeah.
Overwhelming.
Yeah.
I mean, watching the film in a stuffed Royal Alex Theatre was one thing, incredible experience, and then to spill out onto King Street and everyone form this parade, to then have a sing-along with choir was inspired. And it was just kind of the perfect come down from the film as well, because it's so emotionally charged and people were just kind of the senses were all sort of, raised and tingling. And then just to go out and be a community like that out on the streets of Toronto made it feel like a small town, I have to say.
I bet. Let's take a look at that moment too.
It was inspiring, and it really speaks to the band and their fans. We put out a call out to the fans, come join us for this sing-along. And they showed up.
Yeah. Let's show our viewers what we're talking about in case you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't? Okay,
no,
look
we
at
were
this.
in it.
You are ahead by a century.
There we are.
Yeah.
But that was the parade. Yeah, that was the parade.
There's Robbie.
It's great.
It's nice
Johnny.
to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all these people. I mean, the Tragically Hip, as I mentioned off camera, the soundtrack to so many of our lives. It's really, and I thought I knew a lot about the band. And it turns out I didn't.
There you go.
Yeah, which is, I guess, the point. You're taking us back with this amazing archival footage. It really is incredible to look at some of the footage that you're showing it. What was it like to revisit your brother Gord in this way?
Wow. It was like, it's hard to describe. It was humbling. I have to say, when Gord first went up on the stage in high school, I just remember this feeling of immense pride that my little brother had that in him. And that was just the beginning. So, those shows in Kingston, at the Manor, on the Toucan, I never failed. And then all the way to, playing the Air Canada Centre, I'd never failed to elbow the stranger beside me and say, that's my little brother up there. So
proud.
Well, it's interesting because at the premiere, I was talking to Gord's kids, his two sons. And I said, what did you guys think? And they said, it was so cool to see Dad that young. We had never seen that before, right? We had never seen him like that. And Paul's daughter, Emma, said the same thing. Like, I'd never seen. Now I have this film that I can go back to and see my dad back then. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing that's lost on people, that it's not just the brothers, it's the kids.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Neither did I until they mentioned it to me.
Well, one of the, the question a famous question that people ask, if you could have dinner with anybody in the world, who would it be? And my answer is always, I'd like to go and have lunch with my dad or my mom at 18 years old.
Wow.
The fact that you've created that space for the kids is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Jake, I want you to take us back to the 80s. Okay. Take us back to that moment. You get the tape of the hip.
Right.
And
a cassette tape.
It was a cassette tape. For those that don't know, look it up. You get this cassette tape. You listen to it, and you think, I gotta see these guys play. So you go and see them play. Yeah. What do you remember about that moment?
I remember the feeling. I remember that the band hit. I had talked to the guys before, but had no idea what I was about to see. I went up to the dressing room, introduced myself, because my partner Alan and I had set up this gig. And they walked on stage. Gord says, I can only give you everything. Yeah. And Alan didn't realize they were about to play a song called I Can Only Give You Everything. And Alan looked at me and he went, good attitude.
That's the way to go.
Right? And then they broke into the them song, I Can Only Give You Everything. And within 30 seconds, I was back. And I was like, I looked at Alan and said, we got to sign these guys tonight. Yeah. Like, this is like
you should have said
lightning
that in
a
a documentary, Jay.
I think I did.
I think you did.
I think I did.
To quote yourself.
Yeah, I'm just giving everybody a little tease, but yeah.
But that really sums up the band too. They really did give everything. And when you went to a concert, I think I saw them every time, wherever I was, and I was there. I spent a lot of time in Kingston. I spent 4 years there as well. It was nice to see in the docuseries, like little venues pop up that I recognized.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you went back to the high school.
Back to KCVI. Yeah, it was, it's now owned by Queen's, but we got in there just as it was leaving the Kingston School Board and before Queen's took it over, and had the run of the place for 4 days and did the first series of interviews with the band before we really even had a deal with Prime Video or anything. But we needed to get in there. And I think it really helped open up the guys, like just being back in those hallways. At first I kind of felt like, oh, it's too bad there's no, because it had kind of been emptied out, except there were still the desks, obviously the lockers and things like that. So in many ways, it was kind of perfect as a transport back to the 80s, because there were no current references, because the school had moved on to a new site. And so I think just for the guys walking around those halls, in between interviews, I think like all those ghosts, started to, show up. It was a really, I'm so thankful that was our first step. Like it really was really a perfect way to get them going down this road, because we did major interviews. We probably did I did 4 interviews with each member of the band, like all day kind of interviews. So we were plumbing the depths for sure.
It was very cool that you were able to go back to that space, because there's a feeling that happens when you go to a familiar place that you haven't been to in a long time.
Yeah.
It's sort of like it comes from within, right? And therefore,
well, physical space too, right?
Yeah.
Like physical space is kind of, those are all the cues, the smell and everything else. And even the patina on the lockers, I was really struck by that. And the old water fountain with this, surrounded by this pink tile. And I was just like, wow, that is just incredible. Like it, and just so evocative, like just so transporting.
And that's what this film does. It is brilliant. It is such a ride, and it'll take you back and make you look forward. So thank you both for being here today.
Wow.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
We're glad you're enjoying Your Morning, the podcast. Every week, we bring you some of the most interesting conversations from our show on a wide variety of topics. And of course, you can always watch that show live, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic on CTV, CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app.
Now, get ready for a homecoming. Come From Away, the smash musical that's won hearts right across the country and the world. It returns to Canadian stages.
It's a touching and hilarious portrayal of the kindness in the face of tragedy. Come From Away, we know, tells the true story of thousands of stranded passengers who find hope in a small Canadian town after 9/11.
It is such a great production. Anne-Marie, you spoke with Ali Momin and Kristen Peace from the cast, who brings this powerful story to life on stage. Let's take a listen.
I just want to say to anybody who has not had the opportunity to see Come From Away yet, or if you've seen it before, go back again. I have never left a theater performance with more joy, bubbling, overflowing, than when you do Come From Away. What's it like to perform this show in particular on stage?
I mean, Kiki and I were just talking before we came on that, there's so many things that we've done in our career. And, you're always like, oh, it's a great show, you should come see it. But this is the first show where we unequivocally are like, come see this show.
It's so
You're going
beautiful.
to love it.
You're going to love it.
You're both very experienced, and so tell me how this show in particular is different. Is it the subject matter? Is it the fact it connects so strongly with Canadian audiences?
I think it's all of those things. I think that it's become part of Canadian history.
It's true.
The fact also that we play real people has been such a challenge, incredible challenge, and there's so much responsibility within that to make sure that you do them proud.
And get the spirit of it right. Because this story is all about the spirit of people in really dark times.
Yeah, they really kind of nail exactly what that town went through. A town of 3,000 people, population doubles with 38 planes coming in. But it's like so beautifully done. And the way it works is that, these people for 5 days nonstop, all they did was take care of these people that arrived. And when you see the show, you'll notice that it's like, we don't really give you a chance to applaud until the end. So there's this buildup of this incredible feeling of joy, kindness, compassion, caring for people. It's the best thing that I think that I might ever do in my career, in terms of how great it is.
Yeah.
Really? Why do you both say that?
It's beautiful. It's so well written. It's such a roller coaster of emotions that, it's a phenomenal reminder to us who've done it for so long when we start to see people, audience members, and their reactions to it that reminds us how good it's changed people's lives.
Some people have seen this show and they've devoted their lives to philanthropy and they devoted their lives to be of service. Really? These are people that in that town, all they did, what's crazy when you talk to them who were the actual people.
And you guys have had that chance.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's very simple. They're like, well, we just did what we do. It wasn't this thing.
It's the purity.
It's the purity, the simplicity of the acts. You know, they talk about love languages. Okay, the town of Gander, their love language is acts of service.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
all day, every day,
nonstop.
Yeah.
One of the other things, though, is that it tackles some really difficult themes because during that time, of course, during 9/11, you know, there was fear, and there was racism, there was fear from different cultural groups, and this play tackles all of that.
Yeah, I have that opportunity to also play, you know, the inverse of the joy, and I think that's also important. But even there, it's this show is all about like what we can aspire to as human beings, I think.
Yeah. Do either of you have a favorite from the musical?
It changes. For me, it changes all the time. It goes from screech, it goes from prayer, but I've found that the answer that I keep coming back to is the absolute beginning. When we get that little cue light to walk on stage, and there's a pulse, there's a beat, the baron, and this and it's this heartbeat, and it never stops. And the entire cast walks on stage, we connect with each other, we make eye contact with each other, and we get on the train and we go.
Yeah, just like what happened to that town.
And we don't
all
stop
of a sudden it starts, you gotta do the show. Do it.
Yeah.
Until the lights pop down, and that's it.
It was one of the first shows that I saw after lockdown, and it was exactly what I needed. This show is good medicine for whatever ails you, for sure.
It is phenomenal medicine, yeah.
Next up, we're going from the stage to the screen. 22 strangers from across Canada are back playing one of the world's most popular murder mystery games.
It's so intense. In season 2 of The Traitors Canada, contestants compete in all these sorts of challenges among an unknown number of traitors whose aim is to eliminate their fellow players. The winner gets $100,000.
It's such a great show. Kelsey, you sat down with the host, Corinne Vaness, with a sneak peek into the new season. Let's take a listen.
It's intense.
It's intense, and they're there to win a lot of money or none at all.
None at all.
It's everything. So, and we get to spend like not that many days. It's shot within like 11 days. So it gets so intense quickly for the contestants. It becomes like a real world, this manor. It's a very long murder mystery night.
Okay, so what can you tell us about the cast of this season? Because you got a lot of people from very different backgrounds.
Yes, so this season it's 22 players. Pretty much half of them are known faces. Melinda from Canada's Drag Race, contestants from Enoch that we see who was on Amazing Race. Was he on Amazing Race? No, Gail was on Amazing Race. He's on TSN now. We can watch him there. But then we have fresh faces also. Everyday Canadians. And that mix, they all have strategies when they arrive, but that goes out the window because we throw twists at them, obviously, unexpected twists, but also like what defines the show and the game itself is just the fact that depending on the people you put together, it shapes the game differently. So they constantly have to adjust because they might have arrived with their own strategy, but they have to face everybody else's strategy, and they get paranoid very quickly.
I bet.
I feel like the second day in the manor, they're looking for like, who's my best friend? Who can I trust? Who can I? And when you're put in a situation where you don't know who you can trust,
a lot happens.
Oh, so much happens, and you have to follow your intuitions, but that's hard. So they're constantly conflicted. Should they listen to themselves, their little voice, or should they follow the group? And yeah.
When you watch as a host standpoint, with the lens of being a host, do you see what is a good strategy to make you successful at this? Or does it vary season to season, person to person?
It's really season to season. If you watch all the other versions of traders around the world, like you have players sometimes who come up with stuff and you're like, what? So as a host, but also as an actress, because that's what I am first, but just to see on a human level what happens, and because one person does something, how everyone else is reacting, and having to pay attention to all these little details of manipulation, which is something that we don't get to do that often. We see the final result, but how it progresses and how it happens and how someone is able to get into someone else's mind and plant something there and see it. Anyway, it's kind of scary sometimes to see how effective manipulation can be.
I bet.
So, and the players, they can be very surprising. It's often the person that you don't really suspect or believe in that in the end ends up being like, huh, okay, I didn't see you coming.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask, being behind the scenes, being able to see everybody on day one, and then at the end of it all, do you know who's gonna win? Like on day one, are you looking around like, ooh, that's gonna be the person?
No, because I mean, they can all be killed off during the night. So, I mean, that really, but that's the thing. If they're too strong of a player, they can be eliminated and banished so quickly. So it's a difficult balance for them because they have to show that they can be a great leader inside that group, but not too much. So they have to really go under the radar, but then also be seen sometimes. Like it's a very, I don't know if I would be a good player, but it's great to watch.
Humans, brace yourself. Earth is due for a visit from the cosmos.
Wow. A newly discovered asteroid will loop around us for 2 months, and some scientists are calling it a temporary second moon. It may not be sticking around for long, though, but it's a reminder of the dynamic forces at play in our solar system.
Yeah, Dan Riskin was the guy to go to for this conversation. Lindsey chatted with him with a look at what's about to happen in the cosmos. Let's take a listen.
A second moon. First question.
Yeah.
Can we see it?
You could always use 2 moons. Unfortunately, this one is too small. You're not going to be able to see it. It's only about 11 meters across, and it's going to be quite a ways away. But it's a neat sort of thing to have happen in the sky. It basically, you've got this rock that's in its own orbit around the sun, acting like it's a planet. It's way too small to be a planet. But when it gets close to the Earth-Moon system, our gravity is going to grab it, and it's going to, like, this is the best part. It's going to do a do-si-do. It's going to go, that's literally what this is. It does one loop around us, and then it just keeps going on its way. And I just can't believe that it works out this way. But I've watched the animations, and that's exactly what happens. It comes in, and it's like, turn your partner round and round, and then it goes off on its way. But for a month and a half, we'll have a second moon that's very small, and you can only see with a really good telescope.
That's very cool. And what makes this event so unique?
Well, I think it's the fact that it's just, I mean, to line that up would take some crazy orbital physics, and it just so happens that it does work. And there are lots of rocks out there. This is one we didn't know about until August. It was spotted by some astronomers. And then once they figured out the trajectory, of course, their first question, and the reason they were looking for these things is it going to hit us? The answer is no, it's not going to hit us, but it does. I think this is even more interesting trajectory in that, you know, hitting the Earth, that's one thing. It's kind of simple physics, but to do a do-si-do and then just keep going the way you came from, that's pretty rad.
So yeah, I was going to ask you, so there's no chance this thing could hit it. It's going to do-si-do and break right. It's not going to go left. This is my scientific analysis.
There you go. Yeah, you could be one of those line dance callers. But yeah, it's gonna head off on its way. It's not going to hit us this time around. It'll go off on its trajectory and it'll keep going around the sun. And, you know, you can only project these things so far into the future. But as far as we know, this is not one to worry about anytime soon.
Okay, so, but historically, when we look back millions and millions of years ago, I have to ask you a question that you were talking about in your newsletter. Did Earth have rings on it like Saturn at one point? And how is that connected to these space rocks?
So this is a really neat, it's a paper that just came out suggesting that, yeah, we used to have rings. I mean, everybody knows Saturn has rings, but a couple of other planets have them too. Saturn has rings, Uranus has rings, Jupiter has rings, and the other ones are just much fainter. But basically what happens is an asteroid gets close, the way our mini-moon is, but it gets locked into an orbit and the tidal forces rip it apart into shreds. And so you've got these little tiny rocks and they all line up into a really thin plane. And if you go back into the Earth's history, there's this period way back like 466 million years ago where a bunch of asteroids hit the Earth. And if you look at where they hit, they all hit along the equator. And so for them to have all lined up like that, there are 21 of them, for them all to have lined up like that would be either the biggest coincidence ever or that they all fell from a ring. And so there's really good evidence that Earth, going back 460 million years, had a ring for a brief period of time and that it fell down to Earth, made all these craters, and the Earth went on without a ring from then on.
That's wild to think about. So the purpose of the ring is what exactly then? It just gets locked in there?
Yeah, it gets stuck. It's a little bit like having a moon. It's just a ripped apart flat moon. That's basically what it is. And for Saturn, it's holding pretty still, but it wasn't always there. Saturn didn't used to have a ring. It's only had one for about a third of the time that it's been up there. And Earth had a ring for a brief period of time, but it all fell back down. But what's really cool is that period of time is associated with a mass extinction on Earth. This is before the dinosaurs, this is way back, but it was a huge marine extinction. And it may be that this ring was blocking sunlight and cooling the Earth down, and then when the ring fell down and made all those asteroids, and then the Earth warmed up again, that may have been too much for life on Earth, and that may explain what this extinction was all about. So it's a really neat piece of the puzzle that's just come to light.
And you talk a lot about it in your newsletter that I was just talking about. I want to give a shout out to Dan's newsletter. It's called The Bat Signal, and you can follow thebatsignal.com. That's where you can find it. Dan Riskin, always good to see you. Thank you.
And we're continuing with our sci-fi theme with this question. Do you believe in aliens? Well, if you don't, Discovery Channel's Alien Encounters, fact or fiction, might change your mind.
The show follows two UFO experts who meet with people who have experienced strange and unexplainable encounters and investigate whether they are real or not.
This is fascinating. Anne-Marie, you spoke with Chrissy Newton, who is one of the UFO experts from the show. Take a listen.
Before we talk about the show, I want to know, when did you start to believe? And when did you become interested, fascinated in investigating these stories?
Yeah, belief is such an interesting word to use because there's you don't believe in UFOs. It's an area of research, right?
Okay.
And that's hopefully what the show is doing, is changing that idea. But since I've been a little girl, I've been interested in it. Yeah, my dad had a UFO sighting a long time ago in Ontario.
So you grew up hearing about something like this?
I did, yeah. My dad had a UFO sighting and he showed me a photo of it, and it lit up everything inside of me. And from that day, we've always been talking about UFOs. We still do. We talk about politics and UFOs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's been...
he must love that you're doing the show.
Yeah, I think he does, yeah. From what I know, when we talk about it, he'll laugh sometimes because his friends will call him about UFOs, and he's just like, call Chrissy now. She knows more than I do.
Listen, brilliantly, you've set the show in Roswell, New Mexico, and we know the long lore and the history of Roswell, but why, what does it add to the show? That the fact that it's based there?
Oh, for sure. 1947 was the alleged Roswell crash or debris crash. And so having it based there is such the beginning of the counterculture that started for ufology and people loving...
Is that what it's called?
Well, yes. Some people like the term, some people don't. But I enjoy it. I think it's a great term for the fact that it's an area of study. It's an ology, right?
Yeah.
And so it's based in Roswell, and a whole bunch of people, come and speak with us and share their experiences, and they come across across North America.
What I really love about the concept of this show is it is like investigative journalism. People come to you with this story that has enough in it that you're like, this is worth investigating and digging into, and that's what you do.
100%, it is. And it's looking into the strange and a phenomenon that we're not really sure about, and we're learning so much more, over the years. But yeah, it is investigative journalism, but I'm also looking at data. I'm using testimony and data to come to a conclusion with Mitch Horowitz and I to see if it's a UFO or not.
Okay, let's share some of these examples with people, some of the stories that you guys look into in this program. Can you start off with, which one is your favorite?
Oh, gosh. I would say that there's something called a transmedium UFO. And so transmedium means water, air, and space, right?
Okay.
And so in California, there has been known for multiple UFO sightings on Catalina Island. And so someone comes in, and he's a man that has been on the ocean for years with his partner, and he sees what we think is a transmedium UFO.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable. His story, his testimony, all the data that we collect, and that we noticed that potentially he probably did see something. And it was an unbelievable story to hear and listen to.
Oh, I love it. It's got elements of sort of all my favorite shows. It's almost a bit like Antiques Roadshow because you have to come to people and say, hey, guess what? Yes or no. It's either valid or not. Anyway, it's a really great concept. Thank you, Chrissy, so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, a reminder, you can watch Alien Encounters on Discovery Channel, Discovery Plus, and Max.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
For more great conversations, download or hit subscribe to the Your Morning, the podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget, watch us live weekday mornings on CTV, CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app. Start your morning with us.